The world is definitely changing. How we consume fiction, stories, and at what pace they're delivered to us, maybe on the cusp of stripping out all the beauty from the art. Let's talk about that in this episode of Horrible Writing.
That will never work. You can't push that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to stop? Stop. Be happy. While you're don't bother me. I've seen better. Do you really want to? And great. Get up.
Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey everybody, Paul Sading, your host, Horrible Writing. I hope this finds you well. So warning right up front. I'm going to talk about the epic Game of Thrones episode 3 of season 8, the big battle episode that was just recently released. Actually, so recently that it's only a few days later. Episode 4 has not even come out yet. So I'm going to do my best to not give spoilers away, but I'm me, you're you. I don't know what you've seen, and I just know how my brain works. I'll get excited and I'll forget something, and I'll say something inappropriate. So you've been warned. But I think if you stick with this, you'll benefit as a writer from the conversation. So, in a nutshell, without any spoilers, or the best I can do without spoilers, the background of why, for the first time in this the 86th episode of this show, I'm going to talk about a TV show in detail from a story perspective, is this show has been around for 8 seasons. This was the third episode. I think it was the 80th, 70th or 80th overall. I don't remember. A lot. And over that time, it's done well. You all, even if you're not a fan, you know the show. You know of the show. And in that time, those 7 years previous, and the 2 episodes before this one, the show has done extremely well also on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, Rotten Tomatoes is a review site where you can leave ratings, and the algorithm crunches stuff together, and it gives you a percentage out of 100 of how awesome something is. This particular episode of Game of Thrones got a 78%, which there are many shows and movies that would love to have earned a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes. For Game of Thrones, that's the lowest score it's ever achieved. And if you are a fan, you probably saw a lot of the conversation. If you're not a fan, basically, there were a lot of people who were not happy about the episode. They didn't like it. Now, I don't have all the answers, but I can speculate to no end, day in and day out. And this isn't just, hey, that was a bad episode of a TV show, or I would not be focusing on it for this episode, and I'm going to need you to trust me on that. This thing that happened in this episode has literally, from the first scene of the show 7 years ago, been a central struggle, a central conflict. The opening of the show 7 years ago started out in a woodland environment with some scary creatures we don't know anything about yet. We do come to learn about them a lot over the next 7 years, a lot. And we realize what they are and the threat that they are. And for 7 years, there's been near misses, a few near misses here and there, but there's never been a confrontation of that conflict. For 7 years, we've been drawn along, teased that one day it's going to be unavoidable and this conflict's going to go down. It's going to happen. We've been waiting for this for 70 or 80 episodes, whichever it was is that I can't remember, for this to happen. And it finally happened in this most recent episode, the big battle. Now, in that context, almost a decade in the making, all of our heroes, all of our villains, almost all of our villains, for those of you who are going to try to call me out on that, I'm trying not to give away any spoilers, together in one place, epic of the epic, right? This is it. And for it to be the lowest rated show in their history in that context shocks me. So I did a lot of thinking and I read some opinions. Some formed well, some, most, many, almost every single one, not. Just an emotional reaction. But therein is the crux of the argument for me as a writer. There's a couple things I took away that I speculated on, and I don't know the answers. Anybody who knows me knows I'm really big on claims of absolute knowledge. We just don't have it. And I know some people think they do, but you don't. We just don't have absolute knowledge, especially when it comes to other people. So I did some speculating, and I thought, this is actually very helpful, something that needs to be looked at, because if you look at the history of story has always changed, how it's always developing from ancient times to contemporary times, right? Think back to your high school days in those lit classes that you had to sit through. Now, I know some of you are prose geeks and you love the classics and you can't believe that anybody would have a problem reading Hamlet. Well, guess what? Good for you, but that's not the reality for a lot of people. It's hard to get through. It's tough. Edgar Allan Poe had great stories. Some of the stuff is hard to get through. It's tough. And the older stuff is impossible to get through. Almost literally. And why is that? Because times, culture, people, the way we interact, consume the things we appreciate, the time we have to appreciate them, all of this changes. It changes all the time. Styles change. Everything changes. In the late 1990s, we began our digital revolution. Now, in 2019, it's all over us, right? From our phones to our TVs and radios to our watches to our beds, our cars, our car tires. I mean, everything has smart technology. We are undergoing a massive cultural shift thanks to the proliferation of technology in the developed world and in the developing world. So why wouldn't it also stand to reason that the way we consume art and what we expect art to be is also changing to mimic what we're being conditioned for? In years of old, people orally told stories. And the way the story structure was different than it is now. They emphasized different story elements than we do now. Neither's wrong or right, bad or worse. It's all what it was for that time. So does it not stand to reason that as we speed along this technological train track, and we're picking up speed as we're going, that we also may be thinking in different terms as far as what our art needs to be. When you can take a story element, a major conflict in a series, think about your books. Those of you who are series writers or you plan to be one day, you are going to have central conflicts that span the entire series or most of the series. You will obviously resolve some of them along the way. But if you think about those major conflicts, they're going to last for numerous books. And for that show, this specific episode, without giving anything away, for a TV show, this is HBO, right? So for a TV show, the budget was ridiculous. It was something like, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 million for that single episode of a TV show. The CGI, the special effects were absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. If you go back to watch that, for those of you who like medieval battle scenes, you watch that and compare it to something like Lord of the Rings, whose budget was much higher, and yes, it's dated, but they did extremely well with this. Extremely well. With the pacing, with the immensity of the battle, how they could break away when they knew to break away, to give us breathers, to shift character perspectives, so that we could sustain the hour-and-a-half long battle. I mean, they did this thing right. They gave us important character deaths. They gave us surprise character deaths. Some people chomping at the bit because they didn't give us a huge character death. Well, that's all relative, and to some people, they may have done exactly that. But these are the things that people were complaining about. And I argue that we are in that kind of culture now where even though it's 78% and it's just people who took the time to go do it. I loved the episode and I didn't go take the time to do it, right? It's all relative. There's a lot of room for interpretation, but I give you this as something to think about as a writer. In your genre, how is pacing changing? How are reader expectations changing with millions of books on Amazon and thousands more being added each and every single month? We're bombarded with media on our TV, on our phone, in our cars. We work out with a television on in front of us, even on the treadmill. I mean, we're constantly consuming. And there's a lot of stuff of interest out there. It's a binge culture. So is that not also changing our brains, changing the way we consume? We can't wait anymore for George R.R. Martin to finally finish his damn series. He can get away with it because he's George R.R. Martin. You? Me? You can't put out an awesome book and then wait 5, 6, 7, 8 years to put out the next one. Everybody will forget that you ever happened. All of these things are linked. All of these things are behavioral. And these are all things that I'm thinking about as a writer today to publish tomorrow. So I hope you're thinking too. With that being said, I'm going to hang out for a little bit with my patrons after this to give them some exclusive content. If you want to get that content, a single $1 a month for multiple podcasts and exclusive insight, including probably the biggest epic fantasy audio drama that's out there. Even though it's not out there yet, I know what it sounds like compared to what is out there. If not, it's one of the big ones. So, called Crown of Thieves. Check it out on the website, pulsating.com/crown-of-thieves, and you can see what it's all about. But you get this show, other exclusives for a single $1 a month. Pretty cool, right? Ratings and reviews. Thank you to everybody who leaves them and takes the time to do it. So it's all 5 stars, which I really appreciate on Apple Podcasts, by the way, but leave them wherever you listen if you can. But it's the people who stop and take that time to actually leave those comments that really, really push other people to giving the show a try. So, Cianeris, I talked about the last time I reviewed this, and I've got another new one from author Kate McGinn. So when I can get reviews and ratings from authors, that, established authors, that really says a lot. I really appreciate it because it's such a kind thing to do, because it tells people, hey, this author is even saying these things. It's an absolutely wonderful thing. And Kate gave it a 5-star. Encouraging but realistic look at writing. That's what it's all about. Pulsating does a great job of getting at the fears, the disappointments, and the joys of being a writer. As a new writer, I've self-published 3 books, but it's easy to get discouraged. Boy, ain't that the truth. His straightforward approach and stories about his own struggles helps me feel like I'm not alone in this crazy maze of indie writing. Folks, that's what it's all about, but I need your help telling other people about this. I know it's a pain. It is painful. I do this for other people, other shows that I appreciate as well. But a rating and review of the show goes a long way in helping others find it, and I am, of course, eternally grateful. In the meantime, I'm going to update you on some other things. There are interviews coming. I just have some logistics stuff to set up, and I do have a couple special treats I'm going to be doing with the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group writing community as well. So stay tuned for that information. Otherwise, until episode 87, keep being epic.
This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.